And then we'll just follow on with this. This is an informational meeting only. In other words, the applicant will make a presentation. It's on Zoom, but we will not be taking questions from other than the commission or Landis. So in other words, anyone in the so-called audience will not be open for questions. We will schedule a hearing at a later date, and hopefully it could be an open meeting where we can then address whatever questions come up. So once again, this is an informational meeting to be presented by the applicant to the commission. What we'll do first is a roll call for the commission members.
Okay, I also have to read the public hearing notice.
Yeah, that's in, I think I've got that. So we'll open the hearing and advise all that the presentation for information only, no questions taken from the audience. We'll take the applicant's information. I assume we have notification to abutters. We have that information?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And their names and who they're with, whatever, who they represent. The hearing procedure will be read board comments. We'll open the official read the notice. We'll read board comments. And I asked the applicant, if you're referencing a plan sheet, that you give us the number of the plan sheet that you are referencing and looking at. After your presentation, if Landis has any comments, she will make those. And if the Concom has any questions or comments, we'll do that. Hopefully, anyone in the Concom has reference, if we can reference specific plan sheets, would be potentially helpful. Not mandatory, but that's if we can. We will be having a peer review selection. That will be done at our July 8th meeting. We're going to request a third proposal as requested by the applicant to review for peer review. And I expect that then this hearing would be continued until August 12th. And we'll have to see whether it has to be on Zoom or it can be a true open public hearing. Let's see, I think as a result, after the peer review comes in, I expect the commission will probably want to have a site visit. Okay, so that in mind, have you got the, the roll call first? This is for
let me open the public hearing with the hearing notice.
Roll call first or the notice?
Well, I think you should open the public hearing first. You already established that everyone's here for the meeting, so let me read the notice and then.
Right, so we've already done it. Good enough. Go ahead.
Okay, so Town of Walpole Conservation Commission Notice of Intent Public Hearing in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act. Notice is hereby given of the intent of 55BH LLC/55SS LLC for the construction of 300 residential units in a mixture townhouse, single-family homes, and apartment structures with associated grading, utilities, and drainage, a portion of which is within the outer riparian zone of Cedar Swamp Brook, the 100-foot bordering vegetative wetlands, and 3 on-site vernal pools located at 55 Summer Street, map 308, block 52, lot 56 and 60, and a portion of 3075278. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office and online on the town website. The public hearing on the above matter will be held via Zoom conference on June 24th, 2020, beginning at 7 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. John Wiley, Chairman, Walpole Conservation.
Thank you. I have some things to read into the record. This is from the Zoning Board of Appeals. This project is currently before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Hearing has been opened and continued to July 27th, 2020 at 7 p.m. We have no additional comments at this time. We have from the Board of Health, and this is June 24th. Board of Health at their June 9th meeting, that they would like to reiterate previous comments made by previous Health Director Robin Chappell on October 16, 2019, include the following. Clubhouse pool area. The Health Department will need to review the pool design to make sure it meets code. Health Department will need to, at a minimum, inspect the pool yearly. Department has local regulations. They would need to have a lifeguard on duty during pool operations, especially because children might be in the pool. Recycling and trash. Board wants to make sure that the applicant has adequate space and pickup schedule for trash and recycling, and that they offer recycling. Playground and dog parks. The board wants to make sure that kids can get to the playground in a safe manner, sidewalks, lighting, perhaps bicycle racks, and cleaned appropriately. Maintenance facility. The applicant be required to register their toxic and hazardous materials with the Health Department. The board also wants to make sure that storage is adequate and away from wetlands. Energy. Since this is a large project, the board would strongly recommend that the applicant help with carbon footprint and use renewable energy where feasible, such as solar water heaters, solar street lights, even solar on roofs instead of all gas. The board would like to voice their concerns with global warming, more mosquitoes potentially carrying EEE, and building near wetlands, Cedar Swamp. The board would require that the applicant provide the board with a detailed mosquito mitigation plan to review. The board has a concern regarding the impact of cutting down a lot of trees and the loss of species of birds, etc., to create, as well as the increase in coyotes in areas where trees are taken down. Okay, next paragraph. Part of the proposed site was a contaminated area under the mass contingency plan, tracking number, etc., Baker Hughes property. It was determined back in February 2018 that a permanent solution will achieve a condition of no significant risk for current and reasonably foreseeable site uses. The applicant should check and verify with DEP and their own licensed site professional, document to the town that the use they propose will also be a condition of no significant risk. The phase 2 report indicated no significant risk for all areas of the site except groundwater, where some monitoring well concentrations exceed drinking water criteria. Report found no current pathway between site contaminants, arsenic, chlorinated VOCs, and DCB, and the town's water supply to the northwest, but the potential for contaminant movement from a portion of the site warrants further monitoring. It would be prudent for the applicant to hire a licensed site professional to make certain that these new activities would not have a negative impact on the town's water supply. If during construction anything unusual is seen, contamination or suspected, the project should stop and an LSP be called on site to investigate. The board also wants the applicant to make certain that the bus stop is safe for school children and perhaps have an overhang for inclement weather while they wait for the buses, and that the crossing for walkers is safe and that the traffic slows down in that area. Okay. One more comment from the town engineer. It's dated June 24th. The office has received the following digital submission. It's the plans, a single-page memorandum from Conservation Commission dated June 1 to town departments requesting comments. Okay, multi-page binder. Just proposed multi-page to develop Summer Street. Okay. This office is recommending the Conservation Commission obtain peer review assistance for this submission. The multi-page binder is over 800 pages, and the plan set is 86 sheets. The review should include all aspects of the stormwater design report and plans. We feel this will serve the commission in a more thorough manner than a small office can provide and serve the applicant in a more timely fashion. Myself and the assistant town engineer remain available to work with the agent and peer reviewer when selected as the review goes forward. That's from town engineer. If the applicant does not have copies of these, you can get in touch with our office and they'll send you copies of that if you so desire. So,
The applicant did get back, sorry to interrupt, but the applicant did get copies, and I also uploaded them onto the town of Walpole Conservation website under 55 Summer Street. So if anyone wants to look at them, they're there as well.
okay, then we will begin. Representing the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Joanna Giorgio Hilbert. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I'm from Mackey and Mackey. Also with us tonight, we have David Hale, Mark Brooks, who are both with Omni. We have Brian Butler from Oxbow Associates, and we have Patrick Bogle from the engineer. I'm just going to make a brief introduction, and then I will hand it over to Brian and Patrick, who will run through the summary that you've requested. And David, feel free to interject if you'd like to add anything at any time.
I will.
Okay. So I first just wanted to point out, and I imagine the commissioners are aware of this, but for anyone in the audience who is not, that this is a little bit unique in that under this current matter, the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over the Wetlands Protection Act, and the ZBA has jurisdiction over the Walpole Wetlands Bylaw. And that process has already started. The ZBA has already held a hearing. The Commission and Landis, or maybe just Landis, but have reviewed the plans that were submitted to the ZBA and have made comments. The plans were revised to address Landis's comments, and the plan set that was submitted to you with your application represented that revised set of plans incorporating the comments from Landis on the the ZBA review of the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. And I believe on the plans it indicates areas where those things have been revised. In addition, I think you already have a copy of Landis's comments with the applicant's responses. Just a point of clarification on the comments. I know tonight you want to just focus on a summary, and so we will work with the various departments to address the comments at a later date. But I did want to point out, just to correct the record, that in the Board of Health comments, they made a statement that part of the proposed site was a contaminated area under the Massachusetts contingency plan. The site is actually not part of the contaminated area. That was the Baker Hughes site. The project that's before you is on a different parcel and is not part of that contaminated area. That said, the applicant has already actually hired an LSP who is, has reviewed this and has made a submission to the ZBA, and the ZBA is addressing this under their process. Again, the Baker Hughes site, which is separate, is also under the supervision of another LSP who is working with DEP to submit annual reports and do quarterly testing and monitoring and all of that. So again, we will address these comments fully at a later point, but I did just want to make that correction for the record. And then just a question. So I understand now it sounds like peer review is going to be addressed on July 8th. Are we discussing it tonight, or I know that was under the agenda under new business. Is that being moved to July 8th?
Yes, you had requested that we get a third party to quote, so I don't think it is appropriate to discuss the ones that we do have until we get the third party information, and then we can look at it and review them all at the same time. So that will be during our July 8th meeting.
Okay. So I just wanted to make one point. I wanted to make sure that there's a nuance I wanted to make sure that the commission considers. And again, I know we will address this on the 8th, but given what I pointed out at the beginning, that this commission has jurisdiction over the Wetlands Protection Act, the ZBA has jurisdiction over the Walpole Wetlands Bylaw, and the ZBA has engaged Tetra Tech as their peer review consultant. Under the statute, which authorizes this commission to do peer review, which is Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53G, which was adopted by you in your rules for hiring consultants. A board can only expend peer review funds in connection with carrying out its responsibilities under the law, which effectively means that the ZBA can only hire peer review for the Wetlands Bylaw, and this commission can only hire peer review for the Wetlands Protection Act. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap between the two, and therefore to have one consultant reviewing both would seem to make a lot of sense. I know that the ZBA's current task has done a general review of the Wetlands Protection Bylaw, but to the extent the ZBA or your commission wants more of a review of the bylaw, it would have to be done by Tetra Tech as commissioned by the ZBA. And so, one of the things that we have expressed we would like to avoid is, a situation where, there's a duplication of efforts where we're paying twice for the same work, or where there arises a potential conflict between two consultants reviewing similar subject matters, and now we have to pay extra to reflex. And I know that your commission appreciates efficiency of process, and we can address this on the 8th when you get the additional bid, but we do strongly believe that having Tetra Tech review for both the ZBA and the commission would avoid conflict, would provide the robust review that both boards want, and would result in less overlap.
We hear you, and we'll take your comments under consideration when we review this at the July 8th.
Mr. Chairman, this is David Hale. And I just want to make sort of a correction. We didn't ask for a third bid. We asked that the low bid be accepted, which is Tetra Tech. And if that wasn't the case, that a third bid be requested. I didn't know Tetra Tech before this process, and I don't know their reviewer, but looking at his resume, he's very, very highly qualified. So our experience so far at the ZBA is that the town didn't get 3 bids for picking Tetra Tech. They just picked one with no consultation with us, or for architectural review. And so it just seems reasonable that we have a very highly qualified person at Tetra Tech. I don't understand their lower cost. They're more efficient because they've already reviewed the thing. Why are we going for a third bid in this instance?
We can discuss that at the, I think as you know, what the prices were, so that the requirement that's pointed out to us is that we should have a third bid if we were considering the other quotation. So this is why we're doing it. And we'll review that, take your comments under consideration and our review, and based on whatever. So we don't want to get into pros and cons of either at this point till we get a third quote, and then we'll see how they stack up. So that's where we are.
Got it.
Okay, good enough. So, if you want to, proceed with your presentation? I assume you have something more you want to say.
I am all set. Thank you. I will pass it on to, I believe, Brian, who is going to proceed with the summary.
Thank you, Joanna. Brian Butler, Oxbow Associates. Could I ask Landis or whoever's in control to allow me to share the screen? Unless that permission is already there, I'm not sure.
The permission should be there, but Mike, are you there? Can he share?
Here we go. No. I think wow, that was quick. Usually it takes us a little bit of fiddling. Can everyone see the 55 SS?
No, I've lost things. When you get, someone puts a plan up, I lose connection.
I can see it.
Okay, where am I? Zoom.
I can see it.
All I've got is Zoom on my,
I could try putting it on my other monitor. I'm not sure if that would do anything.
So Jack, it went back to the Zoom login information?
he's got an ad for Zoom on the side
Oh, and I think he's
of it.
muted.
This has happened before when somebody puts up their, I have to remember, you can hear me, right?
Yep.
So I have to remember not to say words, okay? God. All right, let me, I'm back on my, trying to log in again. Zoom. Okay. Open Zoom meeting. I cannot start screen share while other participant is sharing. What's that mean?
Well, I think maybe you have to leave. So go down and leave, log out of Zoom, and then log back in.
Folks, I think it's one person at a time on screen share. Right now, we've got one person with something open. So we have to make sure that it's just one person at a time sharing. So if this person that has this 55 SS LLC up could relinquish the rights over the screen, the next person can put theirs up.
Okay. Oh, that's where we want to look at, I believe, is what I've got here. I don't mind unsharing it, but I don't. And
Is there anyone else who's sharing something?
yeah, I'll bail out right now. Does that repair the problem for Mr. Wiley?
Well, I think as soon as you share, you put the plans up, he seems to be bumped out. What?
Although it seems that everyone else had the view of the plans. Or at least I had them on my screen. It sounds like a couple of the other commissioners had them on their screen.
Right, but the chairman doesn't, so that's
Agreed, but so I don't think it's a problem on Brian's end. It doesn't sound
right.
like.
So Jack, you're back. You're muted. Brian Butler took off the plans, but
Yeah, I'll try it just again to see if we have the same result. Is Mr. Wiley muted now, or? Oh, no.
he was. Jack, unmute. Can you?
Jack?
I'm not, I've lost the picture again. I'm not. You are unmuted by the host.
So again, you can't see the picture.
Correct.
Mhm.
At this point, I have 55 SS LLC, but no picture of a plan.
Right, that's our lead in, that's our marquee.
Would it work to email Jack the presentation?
That's certainly, if it's emailable, the size might make that problematic. Or the PDF, Landis, you have a PDF copy of this as well.
Yeah, we
It
got
should
it
be-
today. We got a PDF today of the whole thing, like 88 pages.
I've got the set of plans
Yeah.
here, but, so why don't you proceed and just tell me where you are and we'll take it from there.
Okay, not all of the material's gonna, and the order's not certainly gonna be that of a rolled set of plans.
So, I'm not sure, Landis, do you realize that you have just a PDF, not of the plans, but of this presentation that you could email?
Who is talking right now?
That's David.
This is David.
Right, so all the commissioners did get the plan set, so Jack should have that. It's also up on the Walpole website. I can
No.
email it again.
Not the plan set, just this presentation.
What I have
What I
on
was-
my-
what I was-
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. What I have now is just pictures. I got Brian and David and Landis and me, pictures, and then I have a 55 SS LLC Notice of Intent, June 24th, 2020, Walpole Conservation Commission. Is
Okay.
that slide you're
That's right.
presenting?
Yep, that's what we're all looking at.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Good, I think we're functional. Hallelujah. Again, Brian Butler, Oxbow Associates, here. Patrick Bogle from Howard Stein Hudson will be kind of following me. I'm the warm-up act, I guess. We just want to do a kind of high-level overview of the project and property and so forth at this juncture, which is what has been discussed and is, I think, appropriate prior to the peer review process, prior to the commissioners being able to view the site at their purview if they wish. So what we're going to try to do is get all of us that are in the little Brady Bunch boxes here today, both the commission members, the applicants, representatives, including myself, and any interested members of the public on the same plane in terms of general understanding of the project, so that going forward, I think we can capitalize on that footing or threshold. The project has received a file number that was referenced in the announcement, so I won't belabor that point. We have something of an agenda here for the presentation that we'll be following more or less religiously. Our file number is 1227, as Landis is well aware, and received the comments from DEP. And we'll get going since we've lost a little time on technical matters. The project history in a nutshell: this was two parcels initially, the Kovsky farm here with frontage on Summer Street, and there was a Baker Hughes parcel that had no frontage except upon the railroad track. North, just here, as most of the plans I believe is to your left. The north arrow down here, the N is here. And I hope I made this giant cursor so everybody can actually see what I'm pointing at with this, regardless of whether it's a white, black, or other background, except when it disappears. Just for orientation, Summer Street is here. The post office is in this vicinity. Rocket Duck Pond, as you can see, Cedar Swamp Brook forms a property line of both of these properties that are now hybrid merged into a single project property. We flagged the wetlands initially on the Kovsky property just about 13 months ago. We filed an ANRAD for that. It was reviewed by the commission. Subsequently, the Baker Hughes property that was referenced earlier, that landlocked parcel, was acquired by the project team. That was delineated as well and reviewed probably about 5 months ago, through an ANRAD process. So all the resource areas have been essentially established on the property. premises. We did examine, during that process, we flagged the perimeters of these prospective vernal pools, that shown here as vernal pool 1, 2, and 3. Those that were included in the ANRAD plans, they were memorialized. Landis and I reviewed those in the field. And since that time, we've actually examined those pools a little more carefully in the seasonal window. So we have a 57.8 plus or minus piece of land here, bordered on the east by the railroad track, south by Summer Street, north by town lands of the Cedar Swamp, all conservation land there, a fairly extensive cedar swamp. And then, of course, on the easterly side, Ruckaduck Pond and the former Rice Machine or current Baker Hughes parcels there. All in South Walpole. These the next two sheets are site plans. This was presented to the ZBA in the initial submittal, and you asked for the drawing box information. This is a March 4th, 2020 plan, sheet 1 of 1, proposed multifamily development for the record. We also have, just in quick sequence here, proposed multifamily development that was revised most recently 6/15 with color plan edits. So the same plan, presentation plan, the original being March 4th and the revised May 15th, 2020, just so it's not confusing. And I'll just call your attention to a couple of things here. As the comments have come in, first from the ZBA and then from Landis and the Commission in response to the ZBA's review of this, the project has been evolving a little bit out of phase, just because of some delays, but we've been tracking the commentary and trying to respond to that in a meaningful way and on a number of aspects. And I'll just call your attention to a couple of features here. If we look at the initial presentation plan, we had two sets of four units here. In response to commentary, we've retracted that and made it into a single set of buildings and displaced those. The work in this, going back to the original submittal plan, the grading work and layout of these buildings has been modified to reduce the work in the 25-foot buffer zone and other resource area. And we've made a number of plan changes of substance, and they continue to evolve as we go through the process, including a reduction of riverfront impacts that we've integrated into the most current design, and we've retracted from the majority of the 50-foot policy zone. The bylaw you have a policy under the bylaw. It's not a regulation or codified, but a policy. The commission likes a 50-foot offset from the vernal pool, and we have these 3 vernal pools that we've almost entirely maintained that 50-foot offset. There's a couple of minor incursions, and I'll show you those here on this plan, which is site plan 50-foot vernal pool exhibit, most recently revised 6/24. That's by Howard Stein Hudson. And you can see we have a small amount of grading here within the 50-foot to vernal pool number 2. This is the railroad track here that's recently been rehabilitated. So we have a little bit of grading here, a little bit of work here. And otherwise, we've been able to, and a small amount of work over here within the 50-foot represented by the red line. But we're largely keeping that 50-foot perimeter intact as was pre-existing condition. I've put the MESA summary just on the front end here because it's very readily dealt with in Landis, and I think the commission members are aware. The habitat mapped for a portion of the site, north is up in this image, by the way. The habitat is represented, MESA habitat for priority habitat is purple, and it's coincident or co-occurring with estimated habitat, which is regulated under the Wetlands Act. And this is the perimeter. To the north is mapped habitat, to the south is not mapped habitat. We submitted a MESA checklist to the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program with a specific inquiry as to whether the project as proposed, which was slightly amended, but the only thing that's changed really is retraction of the project further away from the estimated habitat, whether we would have an impact under 10.59 of the Wetlands Protection Act regulations, or whether we would affect a prohibited take under 1002 of the Mass Endangered Species Act regulations. The letter came back, and there's a file copy, I believe, in the negative on both cases, which we anticipated. The habitat is associated with Hessel's hair streak, which is a moth with a specific affinity. The food plants are Atlantic white cedar. Our project is, all beyond the 100-foot riverfront area, and the cedar swamp, even though the habitat is mapped partly on premises, the actual cedar habitat, populated by Atlantic white cedar, is remote even from that. Most of this area just off property and even on property is either hemlock forest enclosed here on the adjacent shore, or red maple and green ash and tupelo in the canopy over here. It was probably all cut over and for fence posts and shakes, 300, 200 years ago. And it's in the process of regrowth, the cedar swamp, but it's unfortunately when they regrow, they have to compete with maples for the first century or so. So this is not monotypic white cedar swamp that you see in some places that are more mature. So in any case, we're over the hurdle of the Mass Endangered Species Act, except in so much as we decide to punch further into the north extent of this and maybe across our property line. Again, so I think that's a resolved issue that hopefully doesn't have to come back for discussion. Riverfront is, of course, a prominent feature of the site because one of the borders, the northerly border, is Cedar Swamp Brook, or at least it was at one iteration. In the prior submittal, we had stormwater facilities that Patrick will talk about in a bit, proposed within the riverfront area in the outer river riparian zone, the 100 to 200 foot threshold. We also had a modest amount of grading for the dog park and compactor features back here in the northerly part, most northerly part of the development site. In this plan, which is proposed multifamily development, grading and drainage plan, sheet 1 of 5, and most recently revised June 17th, 2020. We've actually used a retaining wall, which is probably a little difficult to see here, but it's just to the left of my cursor. By using retainage there and a little bit of grading modification, we pulled that out of the riverfront area. So we reduced, let's say, discretionary work, if you will, in the outer, most extreme riverfront area limits by 4,000 square feet or thereabouts, just in response in part to Landis's comments and re-examination of what could actually be done here. Similarly, on the next sheet, which is grading and drainage plan, sheet 2 of 5, most recently revised 6/17/20.
Brian, I'm sorry, can I just interrupt you for a second so I'm clear? So the plans and revisions that you are showing us right now were done after you filed with us?
Correct, and these will substitute for the plan of record, or at least we don't need these red note boxes here on them, but these will be the plan of record going forward. So this will substitute for sheet 2.
I have a question then. I have a question. Okay, so we were just sent a great big gigantic set of plans, like 88 pages, I think this afternoon or yesterday or something, and I diligently looked through, not all 88 pages. So are you saying this is like totally different from what we just received?
David or Patrick, I think that the set they received has these. This is from the 17th, June 17th revisions. I believe that's reflected. Is that correct, David or Patrick?
So I believe the plans are the same, except for what we have clouded in red. So it's a very minor.
Yeah, usually we don't have presentations of plans that we have not received yet in-house. So I'm a little surprised that you're showing revised plans that we don't even have, nor does the public or anybody have access to these plans that you are showing tonight, with revisions from my comments that I made to the ZBA, with a preference that we would be reviewing this project under the Wetlands Protection Act. So I don't know, Jack, how you feel about this, but generally, you file plans on the plans that you have filed with us, we make available to the public, and those are the plans of record until other plans come in and they're available for the commission to review and for us to have for the public to review. So it's a little
I would suggest
before the horse.
that Mr. Butler continue. However, we need the revisions. The other comment, you're referencing like sheet 1 or 2 of 5. On the bottom of the, I believe there are sheet numbers 1 through 80 something. So that's what you should be referencing, the sheet number in the total sequence.
Okay.
And hopefully that doesn't change. I don't know, has the total number of sheets changed?
No, I don't believe there's any change.
Okay, so if you use that, you can reference what you have been doing, sheet 1 of 5 of whatever the subject is, but also include what sheet number out of the total package is. So it's going to be a lot easier to reference it by the 1 through 85 than trying to pick up which one you were referring to, because there's several sets referenced as sheet 1 of 5 of this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah.
So I think we should continue, but we're going to need new sets here.
And our peer reviewers are going to need new sets too, because these are different plans. So
the other thing, will the red, what is in the red bubble, is that going to be shown on the new set? Or are we going to have to guess where they were, or how are we going to approach that?
And that's essentially why we wanted to present it now, just to make everyone aware that, because if you're reviewing plan sets, it'd be very easy for something of this dimension to slip by in even a careful review.
So it will have the red bubble?
We can certainly leave that in place if that's appropriate, Patrick.
I think that would be helpful, so we can compare or know where this difference is, so we can look at that, and also so the peer review person has that information also. Is that okay, Landis?
I think we have to be very careful, and this has happened before with the last hearing that the Omni Group jumped on, that they sent a letter sort of the day before or day of the hearing and wanted me to present it at the hearing. And I told them then that documentations or plan or any information that's going to be provided at the public hearing has to come in before the public hearing. So for this to happen now, I'm a little, it's difficult because we have to make it available to the public. We are trying to hire a peer reviewer, and now there's different plans. So sure, go forward, but right now the plans that have been submitted for review are the plans that you submitted with the notice of intent. Those are the plans of record. Also DEP has to get these plans too. So you can show all these nuances and everything, but as of now, the plans that you submitted with the notice of intent are the plans of record until you submit a formal revision.
And
DEP.
if I might just interject, I'm sorry, is there feedback? This is one of the nuances of having the Wetlands Protection Act reviewed by one board and the bylaw reviewed by another board. I think,
I don't think, I don't know, Chairman, if you want to say something right now, but I don't think we should go into.
No, I guess my point is, there were changes that were made that we thought it would be useful to highlight, but we understand that for your commission, the plan of record at this point is the one that was submitted. Brian felt, and we agreed that it would be useful to show you what changes we were making, assuming that, understanding that they had come from you. If that's not useful for tonight, he could certainly just continue to focus on an overview of the project and not highlight changes that will be submitted to you. We just felt that it might be helpful for you to see those changes because some changes were made prior to submitting. Some had been made already when we submitted, so they were on the plan. But this also underscores why having two different peer reviewers, if
I don't want
you
to
have
get into
two-
that. I don't
well,
want to
if-
get into that. Okay? Let's just continue with this.
Advising the commission with these two little changes. The rest, I believe, is, unless I'm forgetting something, having a lapse of memory, everything else is consistent with the prior submittals going forward from here. And for the record, Mr. Chairman, the references are 17 of 88 for this sheet and 18 of, well, it's kind of small. I believe it's 18 of 88 for the second plant sheet 2. But we'll move on to more consistent material if that's okay.
I'd like to interrupt for a moment. My name is Al Getz. I'm a commission member, have been for 40 or more years. I did not receive a roll of 85 sheets on this project. So I'm looking at this on a laptop computer and it's very confusing at this point. So I'm glad that we don't have to vote on anything here tonight except to continue the hearing, because I'm not at all happy with what has been going on. So
Yeah, just a comment on from Al. This is one reason why I'm not a big fan of Zoom on a project like this, but we will continue with this, but we will have to have at some point an open hearing where people can comment and we can see what's being presented. So go ahead.
Can I just ask one more question? I'm sorry, I'm just, as far as procedures, that everyone is referring to an 88 plan set that was sent out today? By who?
I think I said 88 pages. It was a very large set that appeared, that I got on my computer, and I printed out a couple of like thumbnails of it.
My set says there are 86 sheets.
Okay, well, the plan of record has a revised date of May 1st, 20, I believe.
Yes, 5/1/20, and that's on sheet 1. I don't know what the other sheets,
Okay,
yeah, it looks like the revision date is May 1st.
all right, I guess I agree, Jack, sorry to interrupt, that he should move forward, but again, just because this is a large project, and if there are going to be multiple revisions and multiple plans, then the organization goes that anything that's filed or requested by the commission or revised plans comes to the Conservation Department, and then it gets passed out to the Conservation Commissioners and gets put on our website so that abutters can go on there and review it, or commissioners can as well. So that's the protocol. That's how we've always done it. It shouldn't be brought to the Conservation Commission meeting. It shouldn't be sent out to the commissioners by the applicant. It should come to the Conservation Commission department so it can be handled correctly.
And Landis, to be clear, the applicant has not sent out anything to the commissioners. What you're seeing tonight is the only thing. We sent a PDF to you today with the presentation. So we apologize for the confusion. We thought we were being helpful by pointing out changes that were coming, but
from my comments that were given and the commission's comments that was given to the ZBA, with the preference in each letter that I wrote that comments will be made during this process. So the Conservation Commission process.
So we will focus tonight on the plan of record.
Okay, do you have any more,
I'm done. Thank you.
Brian?
Yes, just moving on to a material that, as I said, is already in the record since the original NOI submittal. The wetlands crossings, we have 2 crossings proposed for the project. And there we go. This is a plan already in the 83 of 86, detail sheet 15 of 18, last revision 5/1/20, which I think is consistent with what was just mentioned in terms of the last revised file material.
What sheet number is that?
Sheet 83 of 85 or 86, I believe it is. And it's detail sheet 15 of 18. This simply shows a close-up view of the two proposed crossings, both of which involve bordering vegetated wetland and somewhat poorly defined intermittent streams. This is crossing one, which is I'm sorry. Okay. This is crossing one, the more easterly crossing, and that you first encounter coming in from the Kofsky frontage on Summer Street. And I'm going to just flip ahead for a moment. This is crossing one. The other crossing we'll discuss in a moment. This is just an aerial overlay of the proposed crossing. We have the intermittent stream defined in light blue, and we have the proposed box culvert in gray, and then the wing walls for retaining walls for the roadway surface. Those layers have been taken out of this just for clarity. This area was selected for its merits in being a constrictor in the wetlands resource area. You can see this is one of the narrowest points. Perhaps the simplest point would be to take advantage of this old cart road that essentially forms Vernal Pool, this Vernal Pool number 3. Here, there's a 6-inch ductile iron pipe that all the drainage from this side is transmitted through all the way over to the railroad bed and Ruckaduck Pond. We wanted to deliberately stay greater than 100 feet from the limits of the Vernal Pool perimeter. And so we moved this to the north and also to an area that's as narrow as we could find. You can see the wetland gets wider here, gets wider here. The only other narrow constrictor was an old road bed that's in pretty poor shape, but could have been compounded upon. So this is crossing one. It's the dimensions of it are 1,996 feet of impact in aggregate. That includes the intermittent stream bed. Again, this is the schematic view here. This is the stream bed as it extends beyond the proposed crossing. The crossing limits are here and here. And these are our proposed replication areas. We have details that are in the plan sets on the replication that I won't go into now. I think those can be examined by peer review and or Landis at their leisure or at a later date, certainly. So for each crossing, we have 2 replication areas that exceed a 1.5 to 1 ratio of impact to replication in compliance with the standards under the Wetlands Protection Act for BVW. They're also at the same elevation essentially as the impacted area, and they're in proximity the same drainage system as another requirement of BVW replication under 1055 standards. Just moving on to just a little vignette of the site itself. These pink flags are the bank flag for the intermittent stream at the crossing number 1 that we just discussed here. It's looking back toward Summer Street to the south. It's quite a bit. There's 115 or 20 feet to the Vernal Pool, and then there's another 200 plus feet to Summer Street. But this is the locus of the proposed crossing. We use these snowy pictures, this and in a subsequent one, because it kind of highlights where the water is and where it isn't. I don't think you need to look too hard to see that even in this early March photograph, the aggregate flow here is less than 1 inch deep. So the stream is not really a classic stream in the, what most people consider a stream, but it does conduct water from A to B in a defined gradient in the ground. It meets the criteria for intermittent stream. Going on to crossing 2, which is the more westerly crossing. This is similarly, the net impact here is 2,700 square feet, 2,721. It's a slightly larger impact. It also alters bank, similarly to the other one. With the first crossing, we are essentially enshrouding the bank in a culvert, in a oversized bottomless box culvert, so this channel will essentially remain intact. We have some plans to embellish it for stability and so forth, but there actually won't be any change to the bank of crossing number 1 stream. In contrast, crossing number 2, if you can see this linear feature here, that's the bank, and the farmers, might have been the Kofskis themselves, had a cart road coming through here, and they've pushed fill in to make this a narrow constrictor, so you could basically hop and skip over the stream here. So they manufactured this bank at some point in the past. We're going to fill that and put a straight channel beneath this culvert. Again, it's going to be a 16-foot wide culvert where the bank is well in excess, I think 8 feet wide, both banks at their greatest extent. So we'll have at least 4 feet of freeboard on each side of the stream bank for animal passage and so forth, and we'll have about 5 feet of headroom clearance. So we greatly exceed the 0.82 openness ratio that's specified by the Army Corps and in the DEP guidance, the 2006 guidance documents from the Mass DEP. So whereas these are both de novo crossings, not improvements, we realized it was very important from a regulatory and other standpoints to comply with the performance standard or the guidance documents under the Act and the requirements under the Corps policies to meet and exceed those openness thresholds. Similarly with crossing 1, we have replication areas that are in situ, proximate to the area of impacts at the same elevation. So they meet the performance standards for replication of BVW. Again, we've replicated BVW at a greater than 1.5 in aggregate. So our total impact is 4,718 feet, and the aggregate replication, I'm sorry, 4,718, I believe, is a little over 7,100 square feet of BVW being manufactured here. As we go back to crossing 2, again, this is information that's contained in the line drawing there, but some people like color and visuals of this nature. I certainly do. The existing stream is a little hook like this because there's a road coming through here, and that made for a very narrow constrictor. The prior farmers and keepers of the land here manufactured this. The proposal is to basically straighten it, to go from A to B, as shown in the accompanying plan set, and remanufacture this bank, which again is subtle. We've been discussing internally, we don't have a tremendous worry about erosion or loss of stability. And here, the aggregate watershed here is 0.02 square miles for both of these crossings. I think it's very, very limited watershed. There's no evidence of any velocity or scouring or any kind of hydrodynamics that would disrupt a manufactured bank here. So we feel good that we don't have to fight a torrent of water coming down afterwards. And our plan is to go back to crossing 1 for both of these. There's a windrow that Landis has seen probably repeatedly out here of softball-sized to cantaloupe-sized stones in a long windrow along this shore of the bank that I assume there was probably pasture land in this part of the farm, and probably over many decades, whoever owned it was lumping those softball-sized rocks and piling them here, and we're going to use those as natural stability elements in the remanufacture of this bank and just stabilization of this bank. So it's convenient. That material would have to be moved anyway, and it's already stockpiled in a very convenient fashion. I think I have a photograph of that just after this. This is the other bank at crossing 2. As you can see, this was in mid-March or late March. I originally planned on doing the habitat assessment that we submitted on this day, but within the hour or so that I got there, it started snowing, and then it started snowing a lot, and then I couldn't see anything except white. But in between, you can see where the limited water here. The flow through this system is, again, very, very light, very seasonal. It went dry. The next visit I was there in early April, it was actually no flow. It's probably not even flowing today, except maybe in response to that downburst that we got locally here. But this just shows you, this is the promontory where the old road made a very discreet crossing into the upland over here, and we're taking advantage of the fill that was displaced there many years ago by some unknown farmer, and using that to minimize our impacts. Again, this is crossing 2. This is the workaround brook, manufactured brook that was used for a short crossing, and we're just going to straighten out, take out the angle there. And this is a post facto imagery. Instead of having a wraparound channel here, we're straightening it out and going to manufacture it with the on-site cobbles. And as I said, there's really usually any kind of stream, you have a threat of potential washouts, but I can't imagine an event that would have put anything more than a very limited flow through here, and we're going to certainly try to accommodate any worst case scenario until it's well stabilized. Get the replication areas are shown in green here. So this is just a replication imagery of the line drawings that are provided and already on file with you. I think we've already looked at that. This is in the plan set also. This is sheet 82 of 86, revised 5/1/20, and it's detail sheet 14 of 18. And this is just a cross-sectional view of the proposed culverts that we're looking at the roadbed here. Roadbed, these are footings to support the drop-in box culvert sections. And as we see, there'll be a 16-foot span where the bank now is 8 feet or less, and there'll be 5 feet of headroom. So that's two things. It encourages wildlife movement by small mammals, reptiles, amphibians. It also allows, if you ever have to get in there to do any reparations, you don't have to be on your belly in a confined space. There's actual room to maneuver within the culvert enclosed space. And these are the cobbles I was just mentioning here. Landis, I think, has seen these. The windrow goes from here all the way off screen. So we have no shortage of supply of pre-collected stone that we're going to use that to embellish anywhere needed the remanufactured and reinforced stream that on Crescent 1 that won't be really manipulated in any way except embellished with a little bit of stone on the outer banks of it. We've discussed the vernal pools tangentially earlier on. We knew this was a vernal pool from some time back. There was a 2005 ANRAD that identified these 3 bodies as well as off-site bodies as potential vernal pools. We investigated these in the spring of this year, and we've collected enough data to certify all 3 bodies. And the applicants are certainly willing to do so as a condition of with the recording of our order of conditions. We'll submit on or before that date certification documents, which will be the observations are good for 3 years. This is a fairly dynamic and persistent pool. Vernal Pool 3, as I said, it's held up by an old cart road. It has spotted salamanders, it has wood frogs, it has fairy shrimp, and several mollusk species, planorbid snails, and caddisflies, diticid beetles. The whole litany of standard vernal pool fauna. These 2 pools are somewhat more marginal in their hydro periods. Vernal Pool 1, shown here, has a granite culvert that goes under the railroad track that drains it. So the invert is limited here, and so thus is the hydro period. Again, there's not a lot of watershed feeding it. There's a cattle crossing here, culvert that's dry, and it's mostly occluded, I think, for safety purposes, but there is an old granite crossing here that they could probably march the cows beneath from one pasture to the next. This is an isolated vegetated wetland, BP2 here, Vernal Pool 2. There's a little finger of it that's excavated, I think, for ballast for the railroad bed. That's probably about 2 feet deep, but the rest of it is less than 18 inches and on average well under 12 inches, as is Vernal Pool 1. So both of these in a wet year probably persist and do pretty well. In a marginal year like we seem to be having, they may go dry prematurely in maybe half the years. I'm guessing at that, but they don't have a lot of standing volume or depth to begin with at the beginning of the season. And this year was particularly kind of an anomalous spring too. It was a little dry until it wasn't anymore. For the first March and early April was pretty dry, and then it got wet again. This, in the earlier iteration, just parenthetically, this is wetland C, was deemed as a intermittent, an isolated vegetative wetland. We didn't see it as that, and Landis and I reviewed this. We thought this channel feature here an obvious flow from A to B, made this a bordering vegetated wetland. So we've treated them all with a buffer zone. This has a regulatory buffer zone. This has a voluntary buffer zone to some extent. It's more of a federal jurisdictional wetland. And we're not working in any of the floodplain that's not shown here, but is kind of partially overlapping with Vernal Pool 1 here. So those are the 3 vernal pools. Like I said, we've identified them, we've scrutinized them, we've collected enough data to put them on the map as certified vernal pools at some point in the future, as I said before. We have a number of sheets of the lighting plan that I'm not sure if these have been submitted as part of the initial submittal, but they may have been, but these, I know some of the comments expressed concern about lighting. We just included this vignette here, or this single sheet, to demonstrate a concept view of the light shed from the proposed facilities or structures that are going to be used here. And this is more a ZBA issue. It's not normally regulated or constrained under the Wetlands Protection Act alone, but we wanted to show what we have here. This is the single family portion of the project, the 2 cul-de-sacs. This is crossing 2, this is crossing 1, and this is the bulk of the project with the compactors and so forth way out here in the extreme north. You can see the light is quite well contained here, so there won't be excess light pollution through the wetlands in the 3 major areas that border the project, or beyond. In the upper drawing, north is to the left. This one is a reverse view with north to the right. But those can be perused by both the peer review consultants and the commission at their liking, but we just wanted to demonstrate that we're considering that aspect of the project as well. And finally, we get to stormwater design, where I will take a break and ask Patrick to give you just a flyover summary. We're not going to read the HydroCAD sheets to you here tonight, but Patrick is going to explain just the approach and the layout of the facilities, how we arrived at where we are. As I said earlier, the only activities that are proposed currently within the riverfront area, and that's exclusively in the outer portion of the riverfront area, the outer 100 feet, are the stormwater facilities that's as allowed by the regulations at 10.58. The stormwater only is the impacts to riverfront area that we propose in the whole project. And Patrick, if you could step up, I can't see him on my, oh, there we go, yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can, Patrick, yeah. I guess I have to work the controls there, right? Which is not.
Can you go to the next sheet for me? All right, sweet. So the stormwater in here is pretty, it's designed to follow mainly the natural flow of the property as it's laid out, and the site itself was laid out in a very similar manner. So the majority of the flow comes from Summer Street, which is on the southern end of the property, to Cedar Swamp Brook on the northern end of the property. And there are 5 infiltration ponds throughout the property and 1 storm tech infiltration chamber system on the property. And all the houses and all of the townhouses were designed with drip edge systems to infiltrate the clean roof water and recharge the groundwater as well. So each one of the infiltration systems on the 5 infiltration basins and the stormwater chamber system as well was designed with deep sump catch basins with a minimum sump depth of 4 feet and a sediment forebay or an isolator road, depending on which system it is, which has been designed per the Mass Stormwater Handbook. And each one of these together with either the infiltration pond or the chamber system will meet the 80% TSS, and they've been designed to also meet the required groundwater recharge. So both of these together are going to outlet with riprap aprons to make it so that they don't have any erosion downstream either. All these calculations have been provided within the supplemental data report provided with the package, and they will support a reduction in both volume and flow, for both the pre and the post storm events. as Brian mentioned, there is some discussion regarding the low point that was past wetlands C, and it yeah, you can probably use your cursor. So between where the access drive is, there is a relief culvert that goes between Infiltration Pond 3 and Infiltration Pond 4 that outlets directly between those two and flows overland to Cedar Swamp Brook. And so that should help relieve any sort of water mounding or any sort of issues there with the road, which is also why you have the two ponds split between the eastern and the western section. This is also good for many other reasons. All 5 of the ponds are kind of designed separately throughout the property so that they take larger sections of water and infiltrate them separately. And this is also good for maintenance because you can separate the maintenance from the rental section and the ownership section and make it much easier to have these systems be maintained by different entities. So it's basically all of the stormwater on the property, and all these calculations are going to be supported and reviewed by the peer reviewer. So I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Yeah, actually, Patrick, I'm just probably will walk them through the 5 facilities here. Just proposed detention basin 1
Sure.
here. Proposed, it's 5.
Yeah. So the proposed pond number 1 is going to be the first one as you enter in off of Summer Street. It's going to be on the eastern side, and that one will take the water from the first kind of quarter of what is shown there as proposed driveway A and proposed driveway B, I believe. So it'll take that the beginning entrance section, those 5 single-family houses and those 3 blocks of 4 townhouse units, and that'll all get entered in again through the deep sump, catch basins, the sediment forebay, and into the infiltration pond. That'll then infiltrate and outlet to the bordering wetland. The next section of the next pond is going to be downstream from that. Pond number 2 is going to be the pond that's located between the townhouse sections and the single family houses. Now this one's going to be straddling the lot line between the rental and the ownership sections, and again capturing both water from proposed driveway C and proposed driveway E, everything from the first wetland crossing to the southern side of the wetland C, as Brian mentioned it earlier, and that's going to take through 2 different sediment forebays and infiltrate that stormwater. That will then flow overland to that relief culvert that I mentioned earlier and enter Cedar Swamp Brook. The next section of the stormwater is going to go, I guess you could kind of take your pick, but let's go to proposed infiltration pond 3, and that'll take a large majority of the overland flow from the loop of proposed driveway C, and that'll all go into, again, deep sump, catch basins, and into a sediment forebay, which is adjacent to the 5-bay garages, which is located on the eastern side of the property next to, it's not labeled there, but one of the multifamily buildings. Each one of the multifamily buildings is going to, again, have the drip edge systems, which will infiltrate a large amount of the roof runoff associated with those units. And the overflow is going to go into that pipe system and into the infiltration pond number 3. And the infiltration pond number 4 is going to take the rest of the lower section, the northwestern section of the single family houses and that associated pavement, and that will flow into that and enter Cedar Swamp Brook in a similar fashion as proposed infiltration pond number 3. Proposed infiltration pond number 5 will take everything from the western side of the second wetland crossing, and that will flow again overland to catch basins and a sediment forebay and enter the infiltration pond as the other 4 ponds did. Now, the storm tech system, which is located on the northernmost section of the property, the square that's behind multi-family building number 2, that will flow to the northernmost section of the property and enter into a catch basin, which will flow to an isolator row, which is essentially a forebay, but for a chamber system. It's just a proprietary system built by ADS, which is one of the largest drainage manufacturers, and that will do a similar job. It will infiltrate and recharge the groundwater and then flow out through an outlet structure to that where it says limit of wetland there. So very similar drainage patterns as it has in the existing condition, and meeting the pre and post drainage flows on site.
I'd like to interrupt for a minute. My name is Al Getz, member of the commission. Patrick, this plan on a laptop computer is not even 8.5 by 11. How the heck can I see where these basins are? The lettering is so small that you need a telescope to find out what it says. This is very unsatisfactory as an explanation of a plan. So either you've got to enlarge these things or you've got to do something else, because this doesn't convince me at all that you've done a stormwater system on this property. It doesn't, it shows a little box, not even an 1/8 of an inch square for a house. How are we supposed to see where the stormwater goes from that house? How are we supposed to see where the in the ground systems are? So this is very unsatisfactory.
So, Mr. Getz, this is David Hale. We were asked just to do an overview, so you all have access to.
I didn't receive anything at all.
So
nobody brought a roll of 80 pages to me.
So just to be clear, our responsibility is to deliver the plans to the town, and if in the case of the ZBA, when individual members asked us to deliver them personally plans, we have done that, and we would be happy to do that with you as well. We all have to make adjustments to the times that we live in, influenced by COVID, and we're doing the best we can. If you would like copies of the full set of plans, if you would give your address to Landis so she could give it to us, we'll deliver them. So the purpose of tonight's presentation was to provide just an overview. And I don't know why you don't have the full sets of plans, but I am happy to deliver them.
Okay, let's, do you have anything? Let's continue on. I understand what Al's saying. It's not easy to follow it when you're looking at a laptop or similar device. But understanding that this is an informational meeting, we will not be voting on anything based on this presentation. So I think we are getting an overview of the project, which gives us a little more information than what we had before, but it certainly is not the best situation to have to deal with it on Zoom. But anyhow, do you have anything more that you want to present?
No, actually, we don't. That was pretty much the end of our presentation, and it was, as you said, Mr. Chairman, the intent here was just to give an overview. We're not asking anyone to vote or close this hearing or make any definitive decisions on the project in any way whatsoever. We're just trying to kind of get so that we're all speaking from the same hymnal on the project as we go forward. The nitty gritty and the details and the nuances will be elucidated through the peer review process and then through scrutiny. Peer reviewer will be providing counsel to your commission, and that's when I think we can get into the nitty gritty and the detail oriented stuff. This was just intended to kind of convey some of our thought process and the approach and the where we've come in the 13 or 14 months that we've had some contact with this commission off and on for various aspects of the project.
Okay. You have completed your presentation for this evening?
Yes.
Okay. Landis, did you want to make any comment at this point?
So I just, first of all, wanted to make the comment that there will be further review, there will be further comments, there'll be further comments from me, there'll be further comments from the peer review. The plan set is available on the website. There are plans that show much more detail that were provided with the filing, which I guess you could have showed tonight, but you decided not to. That's fine. Al, if you want a hard copy plan, we will most definitely get you a hard copy plan, because I know you don't have internet connection all the time, so that's not a problem. And then again, I will just stress, as I've stressed before, in order to get everyone the correct information to review, as well as have the public the opportunity to look at the information, it has to come through this department and it has to come before the public hearing. So again, I will stress that.
Okay. Our next hearing is July 8th, which we would like to review the peer review proposals. In order to get the information to the peer reviewers, I think we need new information. Is that correct, Landis?
Well, right now we have the plans of record that were filed with the notice of intent, and that were filed with DEP.
But we're going to stick with those for now?
Those are the plans that will go
Okay.
out,
Right.
that have gone out for the peer reviewers to look at and give us a cost estimate.
I want them all to have be looking at the same thing. So
Yep.
So we're sticking with that which has been provided, the plan of record. So hopefully we will have the information back and we can review that at our July 8th meeting. At this point, does anyone on the commission want to bring up any questions or comments, recognizing that we've got a lot more information to be provided to before we make any decisions? So I'll start with Doug. Do you have any questions at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay, I think we all have questions, but we want to bring up right now based on what we saw tonight. Okay, Emilio? Emilio?
I'm all set right now, thanks.
Okay, Betsy?
Yeah, I have 6 comments or questions, some of them minor, but so the first thing is that I think you're accessing most of your upland with your first wetland crossing, and I'm not seeing any great urgency from the standpoint of the resource areas to get a second crossing in there. We don't typically have second crossings without a great deal of justification and discussion, and even then, not so much. Secondly, I can't tell you the numbers of the single family houses because I printed this out 8.5 by 11, so I can scarcely read it, but quite a few of your single family houses have their back deck or back porch either directly out onto a drainage structure or directly out onto the 25-foot buffer. And I'd like to see some effort to pull those back, mainly because over the years, let's say this thing goes through and then we see people 10 years from now, they don't necessarily want water in their backyard after a rainstorm, or they don't necessarily want a place where they can't set up a swing set for the kids. They don't necessarily want to step off the back deck and immediately they're into an area that you're not allowed to put grass in. It's a 25. So we're going to see all sorts of people asking us for exceptions, people encroaching, us having to do enforcement orders. I'd like to see from the get-go that things be away from the drainage structures, especially with these single-family houses, and they're pulled away from the 25-foot where you cannot put a lawn. And that brings me to point number 3. So will the single-family houses have lots associated with them such that there's ownership of the actual lot? And then I have some follow-up questions, but can someone tell me whether you're actually selling lots with houses on them?
No, we are not. It'll be a single-family home condominium association.
Okay.
And the condominium association will be responsible for compliance.
So maybe that answers the question of who's going to deal with these gigantic retention basins that, you know, are crossing like 6 or 7 or 8 people's backyards. All right. So be that. And then just maybe a couple of little quibbles, 3 little quibbles. We tend to call them retention basins. You're calling them ponds, and pond just doesn't. They're supposed to drain. They're supposed to drain pretty promptly. You're not supposed to have a pond in your backyard, although people won't even enjoy having it for 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours, I think. And then I noticed on one of your plans, I think it was the 10th or 11th one in, you were calling it the open space recreation plan. That means something in Walpole. We go through a whole lot with open space and projects, and we've got some opinions on those over the years. I don't think there's a whole lot of open space here. I see one little thing that's labeled, the place next to the pool is open space, and there's another little thing that's labeled open space. It doesn't really have the feel of true open space. You've got a lot of wetlands, and then you're allowing just a few little light green areas. And then finally, the intermittent streams, in my opinion, should be on the plan. They should be labeled as intermittent streams. And I didn't see them, the ones that I happened to look at carefully. Maybe they're somewhere. And so that's it from me for now.
Thanks, Betsy. Al, any comments right now?
My comment is still the same. I want to see a set of plans because I can't evaluate from 8 by 10 on my wife's laptop computer.
Right, understood.
That doesn't work.
Okay. All right, what we will do is continue this until August 12th. Hopefully that gives us time to select the peer review and have a report from the peer review so that we could respond appropriately August 12th. So if someone want to make that a motion to continue this hearing?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I just ask if anyone else wants hard copy plans before we move on?
All right, I will contact the commissioners and they can tell me, and I'll let you know how many hard copies we need. That's usually what happens. Commissioners, you have to tell me if you want hard copies, and we'll make sure to get them to you. So just, I will get them their copies. I will reach out.
So make a motion. Do we have anything on August 12th at this point?
We do not.
Okay, so we could do this at 7 o'clock on August 12th. Someone make that a motion?
I'll move it.
Betsy, do we have a second?
Second.
That was
Media.
thank you. Okay, now all in favor. Doug?
Aye.
Emilio?
Aye.
Betsy,
Aye.
Al,
Aye.
Jack, aye. Okay, so we will continue this until 7 PM on August 12th. Thank you for your presentation. I think we still have some more things on our agenda, don't we?
Yeah, there's a certificate of compliance.
Okay. Okay. So, all right, where are we?
Will, thank you for your time then. I think we can
Yeah, you can bail out.
not bail out.
You may, or you can stay and listen to our scintillating conversations that go on about the rest of the meeting. So, next on our
Thank you.
agenda. Okay, thanks all.
Thank
We
you.
have minutes from June 10th. Someone want to move those minutes? June 10th minutes, somebody want to move? Them? That was Betsy moving. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Doug?
Aye.
Emilio?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I abstain, I wasn't there. Okay, so that's that. Minutes. We have a certificate of compliance from, for Northwood Drive. Is that okay, Landis?
Yes, that was for a septic system that was, redone, all set.
Okay, so want to move that?
I will move it.
Betsy, do we have a second?
Second.
Medio, okay, all in favor. Doug?
Just a quick question. What was the address again?
6 Norwood,
Northwood,
Northwood, sorry.
number 6 Northwood.
I think I want to abstain. That one rings a bell that I had some concern on, but
Okay, so you abstain, okay. Emilio?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Jack, aye. So 401. Okay, so that's that. Do we have anything else on the agenda? Just make a note, I think you're probably all aware, but Roger did send in his resignation.
No, I was not aware.
Okay, was it effective? He sent it in last week, Landis?
Yes, you did.
And I don't know if he made any reason for that, but we want to thank Roger for his years of attention and his comments over the years that he's been involved with the commission. So, and what else do we have here? Is there any? That's all I see on the agenda. Did I miss anything? I do have. You sent out an email, Landis, that we needed to get together to sign something.
Yes, and I forgot to give it to you when we met yesterday, so.
I saw
I
that
did.
later.
Yeah, I know. I'll have to come by. There's now two signature pages that I need to get full wet signatures because they're land court recordings, so the land court won't accept the digital signatures.
Okay, so you'll call and catch people
Yeah,
home. so
I'll have
you
to
can
catch
get
you,
those.
Doug. I'll have to come by again. Betsy, you're all set. Al, I have to come by your house again.
You have it? Can you stop in the morning? Or you don't have the paperwork?
Sure. No, I can. I'm in the office right now, so I can bring it by.
Okay, then probably, I don't know where I'll be the rest of the day, but I will be here when you head into work, so just
Okay.
toot your horn or rap on the door or whatever. Wake
Okay.
me up.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be up.
And Emilio, I know that you started a new job, so you're available more after 4:30, I think you said.
Right.
Okay.
I can swing
Okay.
by.
You can swing by town hall.
Yeah, whenever. Yeah, when are you there later? Thursdays.
Okay. I'll email you When's convenient? I mean, technically, I think if we have 4 signatures, we're fine, but I'll catch up with you on email.
Okay, all right.
Okay, does anybody have anything else? I guess we can all bail out. How do we do that?
You just want to vote to close.
Oh,
On,
so
on,
was that a motion to close?
yes.
There's a medium. Does anybody else second it?
Second.
And Betsy? Okay, all in favor, you can all speak up at once. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all. And how do we end this?